everyone, welcome to another fantastic journey into the world of electronic interactive entertainment with Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Bajo.
And I'm Hex. This week we dispatch dozens and dozens of demons with Shadows of the Damned.
Plus we slip into a mech suit and slap on some cannons in the latest game from Double Fine Productions, Trenched.
Plus our obsession with the sublime strategy of Frozen Synapse is put to the test.
And I take a look at the humble cutscene to see how it can make or break a game. But first, can you guess the game for this week?
I've had it working with losers like you two.
Behind you!
I'm joining up with some other teams.
Ah!
What? Just keep quiet.
Behind you! There's a
And stop thinking you can order me around. Huh?
I'll be super impressed if anyone can get that.
I actually found something for us to give away this week, Bajo.
I hate them so much.
We have 6 of these Wii-mote rubber thingies.
Can't wait to get them out of the office.
Maybe someone can make good use of them.
They could be yours. Get rid of the news.
Yay.
Columbia Pictures' upcoming Uncharted film has found a new director and writer, Neil Burger.
I followed the tracks to the wreckage. What the hell happened?
Burger is best known for his work directing Limitless and The Illusionist, and secured the role thanks to his interpretation of the film being more in line with the Uncharted games than the concept laid out by previous director, David O. Russell.
Genghis Khan, Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot, they were all great men. But do you know why they prevailed?
I'm sure you're gonna tell us.
Because they had the will to do what other men would not.
The Uncharted film isn't scheduled for release until 2013. Researchers at North Carolina State University have found a way to accurately predict what gamers are going to do in games based on their achievements. By testing 14,000 World of Warcraft players, the researchers were able to analyse the order in which players had unlocked achievements and how much progress they had made with others to determine what a player would do next with up to 80% accuracy. The researchers hope this will allow games to be more reactive to players and help steer them towards content they would enjoy. Namco Bandai is suing Witcher developer CD Projekt Red, as well as their parent company, Optimus SA.
The report details events from 5 years ago.
The lawsuit against Optimus SA is over European distribution rights of the Xbox 360 version of The Witcher 2. Namco Bandai was the European publisher of the PC version and assumed their deal included other versions. However, THQ has announced they will be publishing the game.
I'm tired of your whining. Get out of here.
Meanwhile, in another suit, Namco Bandai is arguing developer CD Projekt Red broke their contract by removing the digital rights management from The Witcher 2 without their permission. Sony has revealed that it will no longer be supporting the PSP's digital comics reader, retiring the service after little more than 18 months in action. The most recent update of downloadable Marvel and DC comics on July 6 was the very last one for the portable, with the service tipped to resume on other Sony devices.
Back in 2009, Double Fine was struggling to find a publisher for Brutal Legend. So, to boost everyone's morale and give them something to do, Tim Schafer divided the studio into small groups and told everyone they had 2 weeks to come up with new game ideas. Out of that came Stacking, Costume Quest, and now Trenched.
Set shortly after World War I, 2 veterans, one Russian and one American, find themselves victim of a strange broadcast which kills most people, but for some reason turns them into mega-smart mad scientist types.
The American, Frank, uses his newfound knowledge for good to create machines called trenches to help injured veterans walk. Meanwhile, his slightly more deluded Russian counterpart, Vladimir, creates Monovision, a kind of TV gone mad, which eventually drives him mad. And what's a mad scientist to do but create an army of robots and take over the world?
The tubes are the plague to end all plagues.
There have been so many tower defense games, but I think by far Trenched is my favorite. You can play through the campaign very happily solo, but the 4-player co-op is really where it's at. Stomping around in mechs fighting off hordes of giant robots is exactly as much fun as it sounds.
And all the basics of tower defense are here. You have bases to protect from waves of enemies, and of course you have towers.
Shotgun turret inbound to your location.
Which you'll need to pay for an upgrade by sucking up bits of battle scrap. Some maps have recommended places to plonk your turrets down, but you can put them pretty much anywhere other than right next to another turret. And there's a good mix of enemy types too to keep you on your toes.
The turrets are handy, but once you've got a fully kitted out mech, it can just make mincemeat of any enemy, so you don't really need them. And I like that, Hex, because I didn't have to worry about going and collecting all of the scraps, but also I'm not a huge tower defense guy, so to be able to play it as a mainly mech game, that was good to me. But if you just want to focus on tower defense strategy, then you can do that too.
There's tons to customize in your mech too, so you can really play to your own style. There are 3 types of chassis to choose from. The small engineer class, who can only hold a couple of single slot weapons but can bring 4 turrets. Your standard chassis with 3 turrets. And the assault chassis, which can only hold 2 turrets but packs some serious firepower.
And there's a great selection of weapons too. You've got machine guns, shotguns, sniper cannons, grenade launchers, artillery, and broadcasters with plenty of each to choose from. And likewise, there are heaps of turret types to help you out too.
Personally, I liked packing 2 sniper cannons with some machine guns for backup. But just about any combination is devastating.
And there's different legs to choose from. Some let you sprint while others let you deploy for quicker reloads. But there are no legs that let you jump. And I know it's a common gripe to not have a jump button in a game, but I feel if you're in a 30-foot tall mech, you should be able to get over a wall that's only 2 feet tall.
Yeah, but that's because there's designated paths that you and the enemies have to stick to. I mean, it's typical tower defense level design.
I know, but the mechs are so strong and fast and responsive, it just feels wrong.
At launch, most of the online games were pretty laggy and quite painful to play, but there has been a patch since then. I think things are smoother now. However, there are no search filters, so you may want a local buddy to play with.
I did like how the multiplayer lobby is the deck of a carrier, and as people join, they rise up onto the deck. It's a nice touch to be able to check out everyone's loadout.
Yeah, and those assault class mechs are quite mean-looking machines, but in typically absurd Double Fine style, the pilot just stands out in the open, protected by nothing but a few sandbags.
Yeah, I really like the humor here. It's not in your face funny, it's all just a bit silly.
Men, tonight we dine on coconuts.
It's not a very long game though, with only 15 fairly short levels to get through, but it is replayable, I think. Final thoughts?
I really enjoyed this badge. I just found myself hooked on unlocking better guns and mech parts. They've taken 2 thoroughly addictive kinds of game and melded them together perfectly with classy Double Fine style, so I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I do wish it had a jump button and competitive multiplayer. Oh, and jetpacks. But it is great fun, and I have friends who are just completely hooked on this right now, so I think that's enough to keep me playing. I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens. Can someone please make another Mech Warrior game, because mechs are really cool. Thanks.
The very first game that I fell in love with that I couldn't put down, back on the Apple II, this was in 1984, it was a game called Conan by Data East. It was an awesome game.
What was it about it that you loved?
You play Conan, you could do flips in the air, you could throw axes, you would kill things. It's really, really cool. Old school, but it was awesome.
Frozen Synapse is a simultaneous turn-based strategy game. Now, that may sound like an oxymoron, but it's actually an interesting take on the squad-based tactics genre.
It's the future, or the Matrix. The internet has evolved into a virtual reality known as the Shape. Not to be confused with the real world, known as the Real. An evil corporation known as Enyo Nomad control everything both in the Shape and the Real, but a resistance group called Petrov's Shard is out to end their tyranny, employing you as their master tactician.
There is a lot of backstory here, and it's well written and humorous, but being an indie game, it's all told through little text boxes and endless dossiers. There is a bit of a syndicate vibe, but you may find yourself skipping through it just to load the next map and get down to business.
The single player is secondary to where the true game lies, the multiplayer. It's your job to command teams of drone soldiers called Vatforms on a variety of generated battlefields.
Hostile, neutralized, unit down.
Each turn starts with a planning phase where you'll order units around the map through a series of waypoints. You'll tell them to wait, duck, move while ignoring enemies, and which enemies to focus on.
While you're plotting away, your opponent is doing the same. Once both of you have locked in or primed your plans, it's time for the outcome. 5 seconds of real-time combat where all of your moves are played out simultaneously. Anything can go wrong, and it almost certainly will. Bajo, staring at that prime button was a constant source of anxiety for me. I mean, just trying to cover all possible situations before committing my turn, it was doing my head in.
Not me. I just plot my points and let the dice roll, baby. What you do here isn't determined by action points or anything like that. In fact, there's no limit to the number of waypoints you can set, but anything it can't get done in 5 seconds will be left to the next round. If you wanted to give a unit enough orders to be occupied for the next 8 rounds, you can, but that's not really the point. This is about reacting to what your enemy has done and predicting their movement, so you're always just adjusting and trying to work out what's the best course of action.
In multiplayer, there's 5 units which you're randomly assigned. You have to manually command the grenade and rocket man when to shoot, but the other units will automatically shoot whenever they encounter an enemy and will keep firing until one of the units is dead or breaks the line of sight.
I like the fact that the VAT forms don't have health bars. It means one hit is a kill shot. So in the spirit of Han Solo, shoot first.
But in the special edition, Greedo actually shot... Anyway, the kill shot is what the game really boils down to, and it's determined by 4 key factors: cover, stillness, range, and unit type. If you're sitting still and someone walks into the room, you're likely to get the kill shot first. If that same unit enters the room using cover, however, it's an entirely different story.
I love watching a machine gun enemy just spraying at one end of the room while my sniper slowly lines him up and one-shots him.
Yeah, and who starts a firefight by just wildly spraying bullets around anyway? I mean, we're lucky that only explosions cause friendly fire. Who trains these guys?
Okay, you're right. Next one. There are 5 game types ranging from extermination to hostage rescue. I particularly like the charge game type, where you bet how far across the map you can get. Whoever bids furthest has to get a unit that far and keep him alive. The other team tries to stop him. It's great because if you bet short and win, you've got an easy job, but you risk your opponent outbetting you by just 1 block. You really have to look at the terrain and find a spot where you can bet 2 or where you can defend against a bid. The tactics, and that's before the game even starts.
There's 2 ways to play each game type, light and dark. In light, you can see your opponent's VAT forms at all times, and in dark, you can only see what your VAT forms have line of sight to.
Dark is definitely the best way to play this game because it just adds a layer of paranoia, especially when it gets to round 6 and you haven't seen one of their units. Where is he?
Unit down.
Oh, there. In the planning phase, you aren't just limited to giving your own units orders. You can plot waypoints, aim, and target priority orders for the enemy units as well to simulate what you think they might do.
Yeah, for such a simple looking game, the level of tactics and strategy is intense. I found you could really get bogged down here. In one particular game, I found I spent more time planning all of your units' possible approaches than I did my own moves.
Yeah, but making a plan and simulating all the possible outcomes can mean the difference between this and this.
Yeah, planning is essential if you want to get a good ranking online. There are leaderboards and stacks to check out, and you'll regularly be challenged by randoms just by having the game loaded up.
Yes, the matchmaking system is in full swing. What I like most about this game is that because it's turn-based, you can have a whole bunch of games on the boil at once, and that means you can Alt-Tab and play something else, or browse the internet, then Alt-Tab back. I think if they ever make a smartphone or iPad version of this game, then I'll probably disappear for quite a long period of time.
Yeah, it is easy to get obsessed. I do want to point out though that the game's tutorial does an okay job of getting you started, but the learning curve is really steep, so it's worth experimenting in single player for a little bit just to get an idea of how things work. But we should wrap this up, Bajo. Final thoughts?
I think that learning curve will be a barrier for a lot of people who just start playing this and just go, I can't work it out, and maybe put it down, but you really do have to stick with it because there is rich gameplay here that you'll just keep coming back to. It's a battle of wits with your friends, and my only other criticism really is that the interface can be a bit fiddly at times, so I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I was surprised by this one. I mean, it's hard to fault the simplicity of the mechanics or the complexity of the strategy other than it's a hard game to master. I'm giving it 8.5 as well.
Good game.
We have come a long way from walking up to an NPC, reading text, and then just moving on. Take Half-Life, for example. It opened up storytelling in modern gaming, and without a single cutscene. The story unfolded around you. Suddenly you weren't walking along a line, you were in a world.
My God, what are you doing?
This type of storytelling is hard to get right, and many games fall back to the classic cutscene to push the narrative forward. The problem is, cutscenes take control away from the gamer. We are a demanding bunch, and if what we're watching isn't utterly compelling, we'll scramble for that skip button simply to be able to do something again. So how do developers make storytelling interactive?
Come on.
If we have too much freedom, we'll indulge until we've forgotten what the story was even about.
Welcome to your new home. It's our little piece of America.
Many games are doing a blend of action and cutscene. Uncharted 2 gives us small amounts of control in very exciting moments because the hardware of now can do that, but 10 years ago, that would have definitely just been a cutscene. And this brings us closer to the action. Letting us have longer, motion-captured cutscenes seamlessly happen around us is important to an action game. And really, it was God of War that started this ball rolling.
You have disrespected the gods for the last time, Kratos.
The technological barrier seems to be all but gone. Developers are using in-game character models for their cutscenes, not because they have to, but because they're that good. It's an exciting time for storytelling with this hardware freedom, and it's only going to get better. Cutscenes from a typical over-the-shoulder perspective just don't quite work as well though. After all, how much tension can you really show when you're staring at the back of someone's head? But when a cutscene can engage you, like in Dragon Age Origins or The Witcher 2, where you're making important decisions that will affect those around you, it takes you a step closer to the story and the character, and it forms a strong bond with the player.
Step back, White One.
Stand aside. I know those two, and I won't let them hang.
Piss on who you know. The law says they're to hang.
This is why we love retelling the path we took with others in these types of games. We crafted that path ourselves, we own it, and we feel ownership of it.
You disappoint me, Cole Phelps. Get back in there and raise some lumps, boy! I need a confession!
And this connection to story is getting stronger. L.A. Noire, for example, combined incredible capture technology, acting, and cases that made you twist inside. Busting into the home of a witness and watching them crumble under your interrogations was genuinely affecting. You felt for these characters.
Come and get me if you want some daylight through that suit of yours.
But that old problem of needing someone to point the camera to give us the best sense of drama hasn't gone anywhere. Gamers need precision in their targeting as well, otherwise you'll end up with stuff like Kane and Lynch 2, which was an effective technique, but not practical even in short sessions, and I think most gamers probably just turn that off.
Where'd he go? What's down the stairs? Let's go!
Think about Call of Duty Black Ops. It's a game which relentlessly takes control away from you in order to progress story and have an exciting moment here and there. But they took it too far, and it only ended up frustrating the player.
Hit it, go!
Gears of War and Bulletstorm give you, the player, the choice whether to watch something that's going on by pressing a button or just ignore it and continue on your way, and that worked quite well.
Glorious mother of shit. Got enough Confederate ordnance in here to bring religion to the alien hordes on Warworld.
As long as the floating, disembodied camera is still necessary for aiming and shooting, we're always going to feel more like a mechanical ghost than an active audience member experiencing the character's emotions with them. It's up to game designers to figure out how best to tell us a story, which in my opinion is the only element of gaming that's lagging behind. It's wonderful to see games like Heavy Rain and L.A. Noire trying new things and pulling them off so well. Every character has a story to be told. If it's a soldier at war,
Talking to you!
a man looking for his son,
Jason!
Dad!
or a hot dog suit wearing psychopath. Cutscenes are here to stay, but they're evolving into a more dynamic and interesting storytelling device, and it's story that makes a great game a masterpiece. Quirky game designer Suda51 and the creator of Resident Evil, Shinji Mikami, have once again collaborated to bring us darkness and demons in Shadows of the Damned.
You play as Garcia Hotspur, a demon hunter.
Help me!
Let her go. Can't you see the little peach is coming on to me?
Come on to this, pendejo.
Oh, Demon Hunter. Your bullets have no bite, no penetration. You need more thrust!
Fleming, the Lord of the Demons, is unhappy that you've killed so many of his underlings, so he takes your girlfriend to be his demon mistress and threatens to have his way with her down below in the underworld.
Yes, help her! Because in the meantime, I'll be helping myself.
Now, before we go any further, to start your game off with a horrid cutscene like that is pretty tasteless, I thought.
Yeah, I know he's meant to be an evil, twisted demon lord, but that scene was just filled with so much unnecessary innuendo.
Admit that your endowments will never measure up to my own.
And I know you can forever have a lot of unnecessary innuendo, but I don't think it was anywhere near as bad as this.
Magnifico. A hand job.
Thankfully, you move on from that pretty quickly into what can be described as a third-person shooter in a puzzle-filled, hellish environment, and darkness is not your friend. This is more about the action than the scares, and you can really feel the DNA of Resident Evil at every turn.
Yeah, it really reminded me of Resident Evil 4 specifically, and sadly that makes the game feel a little bit dated at times. There's good linear and there's bad linear, and I think a lot of this is an example of bad linear design. You'll be running about on fetch quests, getting keys to open doors, and that does get a bit tedious bouncing backwards and forwards. There are a few inspired areas, such as this Tetris level, but they are few and far between. And then you get to the middle section of this game, and it really loses pace and just goes off track a bit, and you're thrown into these quite tedious shooting galleries.
This my big boner! This my big boner! This my big boner!
And then for no reason, you're just launched into these 2D paper levels, and they're a bit random and feel out of place and not really sophisticated enough to be much fun.
I think those 2D levels weren't painful, but they would have worked better if they'd been given a little bit more development love, or maybe as an optional extra or something like that.
Yeah. I also didn't really connect with Suda51's humour here.
Now that is a big boner. All right, Johnson. Let's take this pole for a stroll.
I know he's a bit of an oddball, but I just don't think these dick jokes were particularly funny.
This boner needs a booster. Now that's my kind of advertising.
In general, the story is told pretty well. Throughout the game, Garcia is tricked and tortured by the sight of his girlfriend dying again and again. It's a twisted world with a twisted story, and it has a few surprises.
Garcia's sidekick is a skull called Johnson. He's also his torch and his weapon.
Is there a problem, Johnson?
Well, I'm just saying, demons are buttholes. You really wouldn't like it there.
Says the former demon.
As you progress, you'll find upgrades and new weapon forms for Johnson. You get all the right upgrades at the right time, and it's fun working out which weapons are best for which enemies. You'll need to spray those slow, meandering demons with your machine gun, which is also very useful in boss fights. Your pistol has a secondary fire, which is good for setting up chain reactions, thwarting groups of enemies, and busting off armor.
Many of the tougher encounters revolve around shooting enemy weak spots, which provides a bit of challenge. There's variety in the look and fighting style of your foes, and the scattered mini-bosses keep things moving along. The bigger boss fights are multi-staged, so you need to adapt to each one as it changes. There's no lock on here, so there's going to be a few occasions where you're going to have to maneuver your aim to get a few shots into a boss before they knock you down. This is really solid combat.
Yeah, I felt controlling Garcia was intuitive and responsive. I would recommend turning the sensitivity down a touch from the default, otherwise it's all a little bit like that. And I really like that quick time event that pops up when an enemy is creeping up behind you. The action is the best part of this game, and I think for many that will be enough to pull them through to the end.
The enemies are truly terrifying too, especially when the music swells and they're coming at you from all angles. The sound design is directed by Akira Yamaoka of Silent Hill fame, and it's a big part of what makes this game work. When you enter the darkness and screams fill your ears, you can't help but feel stressed out, and it makes you associate darkness with real pressure and fear. Not to mention it slowly drains your soul, and then it starts on your health, which does not regenerate. Stressful.
Yeah, it's not particularly scary, but it is definitely torturous. I do think they missed an opportunity, though, to make this world more interesting. This game's version of the underworld is more like a bunch of corridors with the odd creepy house and village. The darkness does add to it, though, and many of the puzzles in these areas revolve around shooting switches you can only see while in the darkness, and cleaning darkness off enemies Alan Wake style before you can take them down. Darkness, darkness everywhere! It is used in a clever and intelligent way at times, but to be honest, I did get a bit sick of the mechanic towards the end.
Yeah, Shadows of the Damned is not as polished or as good looking as some of those big survival horror action franchises like Resident Evil 5 or Dead Space, and it's a bit on the short side too at just 7 hours. I do like Garcia's invincible attitude, and he's a strong character, but they didn't really explore his backstory at all. I mean, it just would have been nice to know a little bit more about him.
Before you die, demon scum, I will carve my name into your flesh. That name is Garcia Hotspur.
And some good attention was paid to making the game disorientate you as much as possible, and that all works, but in the end, I'm giving it 7.
I feel like I'm being a bit harsh on the game here because all the combat is so much fun and I enjoyed every fight and the character design of the enemies is great, but the world itself is very self-aware. It's aware it's a game and you're constantly reminded of that in the level design and just by seeing gems everywhere, and that gives it an arcadey feel at times, and it ruins the wonderful atmosphere that music and the world is trying to create. And I felt like those elements of design were just bashing heads and fighting against each other, so it ruined it a little bit for me. I'm giving it 6.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Good game.
So did you guess the game for this week? It was the 2005 PS2 survival horror game Michigan Report from Hell. As a TV cameraman, you view the entire game through the lens, with the aim being to record items and events of interest before your battery runs out. It was made by Shadows of the Damned developer Grasshopper Manufacture.
What do you think of that game, Mr. Cameraman? Any good?
Batteries don't last that long in real life, do they?
Next week on the show, we'll be defending the Earth from a gazillion alien bugs in Earth Defense Force Insect Armageddon.
And we see what it's like to kick butt as a super soldier in the latest movie tie-in game, Captain America.
Plus, we'll meet a local musician who's been busy composing music for one of the biggest games publishers in the world, and we'll find out how he got the gig.
Thanks to everyone who tweeted along tonight with hashtag GGTV, and if you'd like to win this fantastic collection of rubber Wiimote things, all you need to do is jump on the forums or the Facebook page and plead your case.
Till next time, gamers, may all your combos be super. Hex out.
Bajo out.
Yay. One of those has been in your mouth.
Yeah, all of them have.